We must keep living.
My first question is for you, Tali. I was curious, this is such a beautiful series, but I was curious if there were any specific scenes that were perhaps the most challenging to direct or to get the emotions right and capture in those moments.
I think that, to me, scenes that included nudity were more difficult. Like just on a personal level, it can be a bit confronting for me to see like a group of almost like dozens, like almost 100 women naked, and also very violent scenes when people are being humiliated. Of course, we're doing like a drama and it's not real, and there are like actors playing the guards, but still we were building this scene and we're building this world, and we built like all the sets and the barracks. So that was quite confronting and difficult for me.
And you bring up a really good point. Even just watching this show, there's so many emotions, and I feel like I need a therapist to talk to afterwards because there's so much like horrors that I'm being confronted with just watching this. And I was curious, like on set, how did you handle those like real extreme emotions that are being explored? Were there any like on set therapists or like time to kind of take a moment in between those takes?
Absolutely. We had mental health support throughout the production, in pre-production and all the way through the shoot, and in fact post-production, and there will be mental health support available for everybody long after the show finishes, because I think crews and cast, we tend to just get into a mode where we do our job and we push aside the processing of the scenes that we've been recreating. And I think with this particular project, everybody was very aware that, however difficult it is for us, we're just telling a story here. But we tried to create an environment where people felt supported and where we could, share with each other how we were feeling. But also, the mental health support is vital on all projects, I think, but particularly something of this nature.
I think that the crew and cast, they were so committed. And they really saw the importance of the story. Even the supporting artists, many of them had a personal connection to the story, like families of like Holocaust survivors. Many of the cast members have like family members who are Holocaust survivors, also from the crew. So I think it was so important to everybody. So it's kind of like connected us in a way that we could support each other.
Very nice. Claire, I had a question for you. There are so many incredible harrowing series right now that focus on the Holocaust. There's The New Look, We Were the Lucky Ones, and now The Tattooist of Auschwitz. And I was wondering if you knew why Hollywood was kind of looking at this period of history right now to examine it on screen.
I mean, we started our journey 6 years ago, back in 2018. And so, it was hard to predict, the context that we would be in now and the amount of projects that would be made. But I think there is something that happens, cyclically in the arts. There's a zeitgeist that is real, and that is definitely true of this project. I mean, when we found the book, we were very clear from the beginning, and Jacqueline Persky, our head writer and fellow executive producer, was very clear that the way to tell this story was to, cut between the story of Lale and Heather meeting and Lale and Gita meeting, because they're two love stories of slightly different natures, but they're, united by the act of telling the story and bearing witness. And I think that it just seemed to be, obviously, it connected with a readership globally, because to date, the book has sold well in excess of 13 million copies, which means something like, if you consider there are 2 books per household, like over 20 million people have read that book. And that's unbelievable in this day and age. So I don't know, I think collectively society sort of, somehow the arts respond to the unconscious need within populations, and there obviously was something, needed at that time.
Absolutely. And I really like the way that the series constructs the two sides of the story and kind of stays true to the story of Heather talking to Lale and getting the story and the oral history aspect of it. And I was curious, can you both talk about that decision to kind of show both sides of the story in parallel with each other?
Yeah, you want to go?
You want to go? Because it was very early in the development of the script. So
it was a really early decision to develop the story in that way because, the only reason the story exists as a novel is because Heather took the time to sit with an elderly man that she didn't know and to listen to his story and to enable him to process what had happened to him 60 years later. He was still feeling the effects of trauma and all the things that had occurred in his life, and his wife had just died and he wanted to share the story of their love. And I think before he left this world, he wanted people to know that, love is still possible even in the darkest of situations. So it felt like that was a way to dramatise his trauma and to try to explain to an audience what that must feel like. Because I think very often with these stories, when the camp is liberated and the gates open, people might assume that was the end, and everyone lived happily ever after. And of course, we know this is not the case because the legacy of trauma is for the rest of someone's life. So that felt like a way to tell that story and also to kind of dramatise the survivor experience, because as we know, there are so few survivors still alive, and in some time to come there will be no survivors alive, and we hope this is a way of explaining how important it is to hear each other's stories.
I think that there is something unique about Lale's and Heather relationship. So many Holocaust survivors are not able to share their story with anyone. I know it from a personal level. Like my grandfather is a Holocaust survivor and he never shared with us his story. And I think that for us, for Claire and me, it was very interesting to focus on that, how this story is unfold, how Lale is going back to build like a new narrative, and try to create meaning from all the events that he remembers in a very fragmented way. And that process, it's a healing process. And I think for both of us, it was very fascinating to explore.
Definitely is great to watch as well. Thank you both so much for taking this time today.